If you want the voices to continue, subscribe, like, and comment where you're watching from, and what time of night it is. Story 1. The Whispers in Willow Creek. I never thought I'd be the one telling this story, sitting here in my old pickup truck on the edge of town, staring at the faded sign that reads, "Welcome to Willow Creek, population 1,200. But after what happened last summer, I can't keep it bottled up anymore. My name's Jack Harlan, and I've lived in this sleepy little town in rural Nebraska my whole life. Born and raised on a farm just outside the Maine Strip, where the cornfields stretch out like an endless golden sea under the big sky. Willow Creek's the kind of place where everyone knows your business before you do. The diner serves the same greasy eggs every morning, the church bells ring at exactly 8 a.m. on Sundays, and secrets, well, they don't stay buried long. Or at least, that's what I used to think. But there's something about this town that's always felt off, like a shadow lurking just beyond the porch light. And it all started with those whispers. It was mid-July, the heat wave turning the air thick and sticky, making the cicadas scream from the trees. I'd just turned 42, divorced for 3 years after my wife, Sarah, left me for some salesman from Omaha. She said the town was suffocating her, that there was nothing left here but dust and regrets. I didn't blame her, I felt it too sometimes. To cope, I'd taken up night shifts at the local mill, grinding wheat into flour under the fluorescent hum of the machines. It paid the bills, and the solitude suited me, or so I thought. One night, around 2 a.m., I stepped out for a smoke break, the mill's silos looming like silent giants against the starlit sky. That's when I first heard it, a faint whisper, carried on the wind. It sounded like a voice, murmuring words I couldn't quite make out. I chalked it up to exhaustion, the wind playing tricks through the cornstalks. But as I stubbed out my cigarette, it came again, clearer this time. "Jack, come closer." My blood ran cold. No one else was around, the other workers were inside, and the nearest house was miles away. I scanned the darkness, heart pounding, but saw nothing. Shaking it off, I went back in, telling myself it was just my mind messing with me. The next few nights were quiet, but then it happened again. This time, during my drive home along the winding dirt road that cut through the old cemetery on the town's outskirts. The whispers started low, building into a chorus that seemed to echo from the gravestones. "Jack, they're waiting." I slammed on the brakes, my truck skidding to a halt. Sweat beaded on my forehead despite the cool night air. I got out, flashlight in hand, and ventured into the cemetery, the beam cutting through the fog that always seemed to hug the ground there. The whispers grew louder, leading me toward an old mausoleum at the back, overgrown with ivy. The door was ajar, which was odd. It had been sealed for decades, ever since the town's founder, Elias Willow, was buried there in 1892. Elias was a legend in Willow Creek, or more like a ghost story. Folks said he came west during the gold rush but struck it rich in land instead, building the town on what used to be Native American burial grounds. There were rumors he made a deal with something dark to ensure the town's prosperity, but that was just old wives' tales. Or so I believed. As I pushed the door open, the whispers stopped abruptly. Inside, the air was musty, thick with dust. My flashlight revealed faded inscriptions on the walls, but what caught my eye was a small altar in the center, with a leather-bound book lying open. Curiosity overrode my fear. I picked it up. The pages were filled with handwritten notes, rituals, incantations, warnings about the entities that whisper truths. One entry jumped out: "They feed on secrets. Reveal yours, or they take you." I slammed the book shut, a chill running down my spine. That's when I heard footsteps behind me. Spinning around, I saw a figure in the doorway, old Mrs. Hargrove, the town's reclusive librarian, her eyes wide and glassy. "You shouldn't be here, Jack," she hissed. "The whispers chose you." Before I could respond, she lunged, her nails raking my arm. I shoved her back and ran, heart racing, back to my truck. Driving home, I convinced myself it was a hallucination, maybe from the mill's fumes. But the scratches on my arm were real, oozing blood. The next day, I avoided the cemetery, but the whispers followed me. At the diner, while sipping coffee, I heard them in the clatter of dishes. "Tell us about Sarah." My hand shook. How did they know? Sarah and I had a secret. Before she left, we'd argued fiercely one night, and in my rage, I'd hit her. Just once, but it was enough to haunt me. I'd buried it deep, told no one. That evening, alone in my farmhouse, the whispers intensified, surrounding me like invisible intruders. Confess, or join us. Panic set in. I grabbed my shotgun, barricading the doors. But they weren't outside, they were in my head now, digging up memories I'd long suppressed. Desperate, I drove to Mrs. Hargrove's house on the edge of town, a ramshackle Victorian swallowed by overgrown weeds. She answered the door, looking frail but knowing. The whispers started for me years ago, she confessed, inviting me in. Her living room was cluttered with books on the occult. She explained that Elias Willow had indeed disturbed something ancient when he built the town, spirits tied to the land, feeders on human guilt. They manifested as whispers, preying on those with hidden sins, driving them mad until they confessed or vanished. Half the town's disappearances aren't runaways, she said. They're taken. She showed me newspaper clippings, missing persons cases dating back decades, all from Willow Creek. One was my own uncle, who vanished in '85 after a hunting accident. That night, we tried a ritual from Elias's book, burning sage, chanting words to banish them. But midway through, the whispers erupted, louder than ever. She knows your secret, Jack. Kill her. I felt an unnatural urge, my hands trembling toward a nearby knife. Mrs. Hargrove saw it in my eyes and screamed, backing away. I fought it, dropping the knife, but the room filled with shadows, twisting into forms that clawed at us. She collapsed, clutching her chest, whispering, confess, or they'll never stop. I fled, driving aimlessly until dawn. Back home, I called the sheriff, blurting out everything, the whispers, the mausoleum, even what I'd done to Sarah. He laughed it off as stress, but promised to check the cemetery. Later that day, he called back. The mausoleum door was sealed shut, no sign of entry. Mrs. Hargrove. Found dead in her home, apparent heart attack. No foul play. The whispers stopped after that. But sometimes, late at night, I hear a faint murmur, a reminder. Willow Creek looks the same, quaint, peaceful, but I know better. If you're driving through a small town like this and hear a whisper on the wind, ignore it. Don't dig into the past. Because some secrets are meant to stay buried, and the price of unearthing them is your soul. I grew up in Willow Creek, the youngest of 3 brothers on our family farm. My dad was a hard man, shaped by the Depression, and he taught us that hard work was the only way to keep the land from swallowing you whole. My brothers left for the city as soon as they could, but I stayed, marrying Sarah right out of high school. We had a good life at first, picnics by the creek, dances at the town hall. But as the years wore on, the isolation got to her. Arguments became frequent, and that night, I regret it every day. She left with bruises and a broken heart, and I drowned my guilt in work. The mill was my escape. The night shifts were lonely, but peaceful. Until the whispers. Describe the first encounter in more detail. I was leaning against the silo, the metal cool against my back, lighting up my Marlboro. The smoke curled up into the night, and that's when the breeze picked up, rustling the corn. At first, it was just a sigh, like the wind through leaves. Then, words formed, Jack. My name, clear as day. I froze, cigarette halfway to my lips. Who's there? I called out, voice echoing off the silos. No answer, but the whisper came again, come closer. We know what you did. Adrenaline surged. I dropped the cigarette, grinding it under my boot, and hurried back inside. The other guys, Tom and Earl, were at their stations, oblivious. You hear anything out there? I asked Tom. He shook his head, laughing. Just your imagination, Jackie boy. Too many late nights. But it wasn't. The drive home was worse. The road to my farm passes the old Willow Creek Cemetery, a place kids dare each other to visit on Halloween. Graves dating back to the 1800s, tilted stones etched with names long forgotten. As my headlight swept over the iron gate, the whispers started again, multiple voices now, overlapping. Jack, she's not the only one. Referring to Sarah. Or something else. I sped up, but the truck's radio crackled to life on its own, static interspersed with whispers. Confess. I turned it off, hands shaking. At home, the farmhouse creaked in the wind, an old structure built by my grandfather. I locked the doors, poured a whiskey, and tried to sleep. But in the dark, the whispers infiltrated my dreams, visions of shadowy figures in the fields, watching. The next day, I researched at the library. Mrs. Hargrove was there, her glasses perched on her nose, stacking books. "Looking for something specific, Jack?" she asked. I hesitated, then asked about town history. She pointed me to a section on Elias Willow. As I read, I learned more. Elias wasn't just a founder, he was accused of witchcraft by the locals in his time, but the charges were dropped when accusers vanished. The book mentioned whispering spirits in native legends, guardians of secrets. That night, the whispers led me to the mausoleum. Described the interior, cobwebs, the scent of decay, the book with yellowed pages, illustrations of ethereal beings. The confrontation with Mrs. Hargrove, she revealed she'd heard them too. After her husband's accident, he died in a car crash, but she confessed to me that she tampered with the brakes during a fight. The ritual, we lit candles, drew symbols on the floor. The shadows came alive, whispering our sins aloud. I felt them pulling at my mind, forcing memories to surface, not just Sarah, but childhood thefts, lies to my dad. After her death, I confessed to the sheriff, but he dismissed it. Now, I live with the silence, but I know they're waiting for the next person with a secret. Over the next week, the whispers escalated. They started during the day, at the grocery store, in the murmur of conversations. Tell them about the night with Sarah. I dropped my basket, people staring. I visited Sarah in Omaha, begging forgiveness. She forgave me, but the whispers didn't stop. Then, a town meeting where someone else mentioned hearing whispers, a young kid, Billy, who later disappeared. The climax, I returned to the mausoleum alone, to destroy the book. Inside, I saw visions of past victims, including my uncle, their faces contorted in eternal scream. I burned the book, but as flames rose, the whispers laughed, "You can't burn us. We're the town. If you're in a small town and hear your name whispered, leave before it's too late." Story 1 Part 2. Willow Creek. My name is Jack Harlan, and if you're reading this, it's because I need someone to believe me. I've lived in Willow Creek, Nebraska, all my 42 years, a speck of a town where the population sign hasn't changed since I was a kid. It's the kind of place where the main street is lined with clapboard houses, a single diner called Betty's that serves bottomless coffee, and fields of corn that wave like they're hiding something. I grew up on my family's farm, the youngest of 3 boys, learning to drive a tractor before I could ride a bike. My dad was a stern man, always saying, "The land remembers, Jack. It keeps score." I didn't know what he meant back then. After high school, I married Sarah, my sweetheart from church youth group. We had dreams, kids, a bigger house, but the town has a way of grinding them down. Arguments turned ugly, and one night, in a fit of rage I still can't forgive myself for, I raised my hand. She left the next day for Omaha, taking our secrets with her. I buried the guilt deep, threw myself into night shifts at the grain mill on the town's edge. The work was monotonous, the hum of machines a lullaby for the lonely. But last summer, everything changed. It started with a whisper on the wind, calling my name, and it's haunted me ever since. It was a sweltering July night, the air heavy with the scent of ripening corn. I'd stepped out of the mill for a smoke, the silos towering above me like silent sentinels. The stars were out, bright and unblinking, and the only sound was the distant hoot of an owl. I lit up, inhaling deeply, trying to shake off the day's fatigue. Then, it came, a soft murmur, like someone breathing words into my ear. "Jack." I spun around, heart skipping a beat. The parking lot was empty, the road dark and deserted. "Hello," I called, my voice echoing back mockingly. Nothing. I chalked it up to the wind playing tricks through the stalks, or maybe the mill's exhaust fumes messing with my head. But as I turned to go back inside, it happened again, clearer, more insistent. "Come closer, Jack. We know what you did." The cigarette fell from my fingers, burning a hole in my boot before I stomped it out. My skin crawled, it felt personal, accusatory. I hurried inside, the door slamming behind me, and told myself it was nothing. Tom, the other night shift guy, looked up from his console. "You look like you saw a ghost, Harlan." I laughed it off, but sleep didn't come easy that night. The next few days were uneventful, but the incident nagged at me. Willow Creek has its share of ghost stories, tales of pioneers who vanished in blizzards, or the Native American curses on the land Elias Willow claimed in 1892. Elias founded the town after striking it rich in land speculation, building it on what old-timers say was sacred ground. There's a mausoleum in the cemetery dedicated to him, sealed tight with iron chains. Kids dare each other to touch it on Halloween, whispering about lights seen inside at midnight. I never believed any of it. I was a practical man, raised on facts and hard work. But that Friday, driving home after shift, the whispers returned. The road home winds through the old Willow Creek Cemetery, gravestones leaning like drunken soldiers under the moon. My truck's headlights cut through the fog that always seems to linger there, and as I passed the gate, the radio static crackled. Voices emerged from the noise. Jack, she's not forgotten. Sarah. It had to be about Sarah. I slammed the brakes, tires screeching on gravel. Getting out, flashlight in hand, I approached the cemetery fence. The whispers grew louder, a chorus now, pulling me toward the mausoleum. Come see, come confess. Fear mixed with curiosity propelled me forward. The gate creaked open easily, though it was supposed to be locked. The ground was soft underfoot, mist swirling around my ankles. The mausoleum loomed, ivy climbing its stone walls like veins. The door, heavy oak with rusted hinges, was slightly ajar, impossible, as it had been padlocked for years. Pushing it open, the air inside hit me like a wave of decay, musty and cold. My flashlight beam revealed dust-covered floors and walls etched with faded carvings, symbols I didn't recognize, like twisted runes. In the center, on a marble pedestal, lay an open leather-bound book, its pages yellowed and brittle. I stepped closer, heart pounding, and scanned the text. It was a journal, Elias Willow's own hand. Entry spoke of entities from the earth, spirits that fed on human secrets, whispering them back until the guilty broke. They demand confession, one page read. Ignore them, and they take you into the soil. A noise behind me, footsteps. I whirled, beam catching old Mrs. Hargrove in the doorway. She was the town's librarian, a widow in her 70s who'd lived alone since her husband died in a car crash 20 years ago. Her face was pale, eyes wide with something like recognition. You heard them too, didn't you, Jack? She said, voice trembling. The whispers. They've chosen you. I backed away, demanding answers. She entered, closing the door, and told me everything. The whispers had started for her after her husband's death. She'd argued with him that night, tampered with the brakes in anger. The spirits found her guilt. Tormented her until she confessed to no one but herself. The town is built on their land, she explained. Elias disturbed them when he plowed the burial mounds. Now they guard secrets, punishing those who hide them. Disappearances. Not accidents. They're pulled under. We talked for hours in that dank tomb, her stories chilling me. My uncle, who vanished in '85, had confessed to her about poaching on protected land before he went missing. Other names, the mayor's son, a schoolteacher, all with hidden sins, all gone. As dawn approached, the whispers returned, circling us. Tell her your secret, Jack. Or we will. I felt an urge, dark and foreign, to silence her. My hands clenched. I fought it, but Mrs. Hargrove saw. Run, she whispered. Confess or they'll drive you mad. I bolted, leaving her there, driving home in a panic. That day, the whispers followed everywhere. At Betty's diner, in the clink of silverware, hit her again, Jack. I spilled my coffee, patrons staring. At the farm, in the rustle of leaves, your dad knew. He heard us too. Memories flooded, my dad, dying of cancer, muttering about voices in his final days. Had he hidden something? Desperate, I returned to Mrs. Hargrove's house that evening. It was a Victorian relic on the town's fringe, windows curtained, yard overgrown. She let me in, her hands shaking as she brewed tea. We pored over Elias's book, which she'd taken from the mausoleum years ago. We found a ritual, a banishment using salt, sage, and spoken truths. In her living room, we drew a circle, lit candles. As we chanted, the room grew cold, shadows lengthening unnaturally. The whispers swelled to screams, confess. Confess. Visions assailed me, Sarah's bruised face, my uncle's pleading eyes, twisted forms rising from the floor. Mrs. Hargrove clutched her chest, gasping. They want you, she croaked. Your guilt feeds them. I confessed aloud, tears streaming, the fight with Sarah, the slap, the regret. The shadows recoiled, but not before enveloping her. She collapsed, lifeless. I called the sheriff, babbling about whispers and spirits. He came, found her dead of a heart attack, no signs of struggle. The mausoleum. Door locked, book gone. Stress, Jack, he said. Get some rest. The whispers faded after that. But months later, I hear faint echoes on windy nights. Willow Creek seems normal, kids playing, farmers chatting, but I know the truth. If you ever visit a small town like this and hear your name whispered, with accusations only you know, confess quick or leave faster. Because the land remembers, and it always collects its due. Story 2. The Lantern Men of Hollow Pines. I'm Emily Carter, 29 years old, a part-time barista at the only coffee shop in Hollow Pines, a speck of a town tucked deep in the forests of northern Maine. Population 800, give or take, and most folks here either log trees or serve the loggers. The town's surrounded by dense pines, the kind that swallow sunlight and make every dusk feel like midnight. I moved here 3 years ago from Bangor, chasing cheap rent and a fresh start after a bad breakup. Hollow Pines seemed perfect, quiet, simple, the kind of place where you could disappear. But there's something about these woods, something that watches from the shadows. I learned that the hard way last fall, when I saw the Lantern Men, and I've been looking over my shoulder ever since. It started in late October, when the leaves turned blood red and the air carried the bite of coming winter. I'd taken to evening walks along the old logging trails to clear my head after long shifts at Brood Awakening. The trails were peaceful, winding through towering trees, with only the crunch of pine needles underfoot to keep me company. Locals warned me to avoid the woods after dark, spinning tales about the Lantern Man, a figure from old stories, said to carry a glowing lantern, luring folks into the forest to never be seen again. I brushed it off as folklore, like the ghost stories my cousins told around campfires. But on October 27th, everything changed. I'd stayed late at the shop, cleaning espresso machines until past 7 p.m. The trail home cut through the edge of the forest. A shortcut I'd taken dozens of times. The sky was bruise purple, stars just starting to poke through, and my breath puffed in the chilly air. About halfway down the path, I noticed a faint glow ahead, bobbing like a firefly but steadier, brighter. I stopped, squinting. It was a lantern, old-fashioned, like something from a museum, casting a sickly yellow light. It hung in the air, swaying gently, maybe 50 yards off, near a fork in the trail that led deeper into the woods. I called out, thinking it was a camper or a lost hiker. "Hey! You okay out there?" No answer. The light flickered, then moved, gliding toward the darker path. Curiosity tugged at me, stronger than it should have been. Against my better judgment, I followed. The trail narrowed, branches clawing at my jacket. The lantern stayed just out of reach, always a bend ahead, its light cutting through the thickening fog. My phone's flashlight was useless, the beam seemed to drown in the mist. Then I heard it, a low hum, like a voice chanting under its breath, words I couldn't make out. My heart pounded, but my feet kept moving, drawn like a moth to flame. The air grew colder, the trees denser, until I stumbled into a clearing I'd never seen before, though I swore I knew every inch of these trails. The lantern hung there, floating above the ground, no one holding it. Below it, etched into the dirt, was a circle of stones, each marked with strange, jagged symbols. The humming stopped, replaced by silence so heavy it pressed on my chest. I should have run, but I was frozen, staring at the lantern. Then, from the shadows, a figure stepped forward, tall, too tall, its outline blurred like smoke. It wore a tattered coat, and its face. God, its face was wrong. No eyes, no mouth, just a smooth expanse where features should have been. The lantern flared brighter, and I swear I saw my own reflection in that blank face, twisted with fear. A voice, dry as dead leaves, spoke inside my head, "You're hiding something, Emily. Show me." My mind flashed to my ex, Ryan, the fight we'd had, the night I'd slashed his tires in a drunken rage and lied to the cops about it. No one knew, not even my best friend, Tara. But this thing knew. I stumbled back, tripping over a root. The figure didn't move, but the lantern drifted closer, its light burning my eyes. I scrambled to my feet and ran, branches tearing at my skin. The humming chased me, louder now, like a swarm of bees in my skull. I don't know how long I ran, but I burst out onto the main trail, gasping, and the light was gone. My phone showed 3 a.m., hours had passed, though it felt like minutes. I made it home, locking every door, but sleep wouldn't come. The next day, I checked the trail in daylight. No clearing, no stones, no lantern. Just endless pines. I tried to forget it, but the lanternman wasn't done. The next night, closing up the shop, I saw the glow again, outside the window, hovering across the street. Customers didn't notice, but I did. It followed me home, always at a distance, its light flickering in my rearview mirror. At night, I'd hear scratching at my windows, and once, I found those same jagged symbols carved into my front door. I confided in Tara, who worked the morning shift with me. She was a local, born in Hollow Pines, and her face went pale when I described the figure. "That's the lanternman," she whispered. "My grandpa saw him once, back in the 60s. Said he lures you with light, but it's what's in the dark that gets you." She told me about the disappearances, loggers, hikers, even a kid last year, all last seen near the woods. Her grandpa claimed the lanternman was tied to the land, a guardian of some old pact made when the town was founded in the 1800s, during the logging boom. Someone had wronged the forest, he said, and it demanded payment. Tara suggested I talk to Old Man Carver, the town's unofficial historian, who lived in a cabin just outside the forest. I found him chopping wood. Worse. The lantern appeared in my backyard, its light seeping through my curtains. The humming filled my dreams, showing me Ryan's car, the knife in my hand, the lies I'd told. I couldn't take it anymore. I gathered what I needed, the pocket knife I'd used that night, a photo of me and Ryan from happier times, and a letter I wrote confessing everything. At midnight, I trekked back to the trail, heart hammering. The lantern was waiting, guiding me to that same clearing. I built a small fire, the flames casting shadows that danced like specters. I burned the knife, the photo, the letter, whispering my confession to the dark. I slashed his tires. I lied. "I'm sorry." The humming stopped. The lantern dimmed, then vanished. Relief flooded me, it was over. But as I turned to leave, the figure was there, closer than before. Its blank face tilted, as if studying me. The voice in my head hissed, "Not enough." The ground beneath me softened, roots curling around my ankles like fingers. I screamed, pulling free, and ran faster than I'd ever run, not stopping until I was back in town. The next morning, I checked the clearing. The fire's ashes were gone, replaced by a single stone with a new symbol, a spiral, like an eye. I quit my job and moved back to Bangor a week later. But the lanternman followed. I see his light sometimes, in alleyways, in reflections. Tara called me last month, another hiker vanished near Hollow Pines. If you're ever in a small town with woods that feel too quiet, and you see a lantern glowing where it shouldn't, don't follow it. Don't think it's just a story. And if you've got a secret, burn it before the forest does. Story 3. The Bell Tolls in Black Hollow. My name is Daniel Reed, and I'm 35, a mechanic who spent his whole life in Black Hollow, a coal mining town in West Virginia, population barely scraping 600. It's a place where the mountains loom like they're holding their breath, and the air always smells faintly of soot. Black Hollow's the kind of town where folks cling to routine. The diner opens at 6 a.m., the church fills up on Sundays, and the old mine siren still wails at noon, though the mines shut down decades ago. I live in a trailer just off Route 19, fixing cars in a garage I inherited from my dad. Growing up here, you hear stories about the mines, cave-ins, ghosts of miners trapped below. But the one that stuck with me was about the bell. An old iron bell in the town square, forged when Black Hollow was founded in 1873. They say it rings on its own when something bad's coming. I never believed it until last winter, when the bell tolled for me, and I learned what it means to be marked by this town. It was late January, the kind of cold that seeps into your bones and makes your breath freeze midair. I'd been working late in the garage, rebuilding a carburetor for old man Jenkins' pickup. The radio was playing some classic rock, cutting through the silence of the snow-dusted night. Around 10 p.m., I heard it, a single, deep clang, like a hammer striking iron. I froze, wrench in hand. The bell in the town square was a relic, untouched for years, its rope rotted away. It couldn't ring on its own. I stepped outside, the cold biting my face, and listened. Another clang, slow and deliberate, echoing through the empty streets. My stomach twisted, the stories flooded back. My grandma used to say, when the bell tolls without a hand, death's walking black hollow. I grabbed my coat and headed toward the square, my boots crunching in the fresh snow. The town was asleep, houses dark, the only light from flickering street lamps. The bell stood in the center of the square, rusted and heavy, surrounded by a low iron fence. As I approached, it rang again, the sound vibrating in my chest. No one was there. The snow around the bell was undisturbed, no footprints, no sign of anyone pulling a prank. I reached out, touching the cold metal, and felt a jolt, like static but deeper, like something alive. That's when I saw it, a shadow moving at the edge of the square, near the old mine entrance sealed up since the 80s. It was tall, hunched, with limbs too long for a man, and it moved like it was gliding. Its head turned, and I swear I saw eyes glowing like embers before it slipped into the dark. I should have gone home, but I didn't. I'd always been stubborn, the kind of guy who needed to see things for himself. I followed the shadow, flashlight in hand, toward the mine entrance. The air grew heavier, smelling of damp earth and something metallic, like blood. The entrance was boarded up, but one plank was loose, just enough for me to squeeze through. Inside, the tunnel was narrow, walls glistening with moisture. My flashlight caught faded graffiti, names of miners, dates from decades ago. The air buzzed with a low hum, like machinery far below. Then, a voice, raspy and close, "Daniel, you owe us." My heart stopped. No one knew about my debt, not the bank loans for the garage, but the real one. 2 years ago, I'd taken money from a shady guy in Charleston to keep the business afloat, knowing it was dirty. I'd lied to everyone, said I'd inherited some cash. But whatever was in that mine knew. The hum grew louder, and I saw it again, the shadow, now closer, its form sharper. It wasn't human, its body seemed to shift, like smoke trapped in a jar. Those ember eyes locked on me, and the voice hissed again, "Pay the debt, or join us." I backed away, tripping over loose rocks, and ran, the hum chasing me like a swarm. I barely made it out, sealing the plank behind me. Back in the square, the bell tolled once more, then fell silent. The next day, I tried to act normal, but the town felt different. At the diner, folks whispered about the bell, they'd heard it too. Jenny, the waitress, said her dad heard it the night before he died in a car crash 10 years ago. I didn't tell her what I saw, but I couldn't shake the feeling I was being watched. That night, working late again, I found scratches on my garage door, deep and uneven, like claws. The bell tolled again, just once, at midnight. I called my buddy Mike, a former miner who'd worked the shafts before they closed. He met me at the garage, his face grim. "The bell's a warning," he said. "Something's awake in the mines. Always has been." He told me about the town's founding, a deal struck with something in the earth, promising prosperity for blood. Miners who died in cave-ins weren't accidents, they were sacrifices. And those who owed debts, money, lies, sins, were next. Mike had an old journal from his dad, a mine foreman in the 60s. It mentioned a ritual to quiet the thing in the mines, offer something of value, something personal, at the mine entrance under a new moon. "It's gotta be real," Mike warned. "No half measures." The new moon was 2 nights away. I spent those days on edge, seeing the shadow in every corner, behind the gas station, in my trailer's windows. The bell rang each night, always once, like a countdown. I couldn't sleep, the hum was in my head now, whispering my debt, my lies. On the night of the new moon, I gathered what I could, the cash I'd taken, now just a few crumpled bills left, and a photo of my dad, who died ashamed I'd gone into debt. I drove to the mine, the bell silent for once. At the entrance, I placed the offering in a tin box, whispering, "Take this. Leave me be." The air stilled, the hum faded. I thought it worked. But as I turned to leave, the ground shook, a low rumble like the earth itself growled. The shadow rose from the mine, taller now, its eyes burning brighter. Not enough, it rasped, and the ground cracked beneath me. I ran, the earth splitting behind me, swallowing the box. The bell tolled, a deafening peal, as I reached my truck. I left Black Hollow the next day, crashing at Mike's place in the next county. The bell hasn't rung since, he says, but I don't trust it. I see those ember eyes in my dreams, hear the hum when I'm alone. Last week, Mike called, another miner, a guy who'd skimmed union funds, went missing near the old entrance. If you're passing through a town like Black Hollow and hear a bell ring with no one there, don't stay. Don't owe anyone anything. Because the mines are hungry, and they always collect. Story 4. The Shadow on Sycamore Lane. My name is Clara Monroe, and I'm 31, a schoolteacher in the tiny town of Millfield, Indiana, where the population hovers around 1,100. It's the kind of place where the main street is lined with sycamore trees, their gnarled branches casting long shadows at dusk, and everyone waves like they've known you forever. I moved here 5 years ago, fresh out of college, wanting a quiet life after growing up in chaotic Indianapolis. Millfield seemed like a postcard, quaint houses, a single stoplight, and a community center where folks gather for bingo every Friday. But there's a darkness here, something I didn't notice until last spring, when I saw the shadow on Sycamore Lane, and it changed how I see this town forever. It was early April, the air still crisp but laced with the promise of spring. I lived in a small rental house on Sycamore Lane, a narrow street that dead ends at an old, boarded-up manor everyone calls the Grayson House. The place has been empty since the 70s, when the Grayson family vanished overnight, no trace, no explanation, just a local legend about bad luck. I'd walk past it every evening, heading home from grading papers at the school. On April 8th, I was late, the sky already darkening as I locked up the classroom. Sycamore Lane was quiet, the streetlights flickering on, casting the trees' shadows like skeletal fingers across the pavement. That's when I saw it, a shadow, not cast by any tree or lamp, standing upright at the end of the lane, just in front of the Grayson house. It was human-shaped but wrong, too tall, its edges fraying like smoke. I stopped, my breath catching. It didn't move, but I felt it watching me. I told myself it was a trick of the light, maybe exhaustion from grading midterms. But as I walked closer, the air grew heavy, like a storm was brewing, though the sky was clear. The shadow shifted, gliding toward the Grayson house's gate. Against every instinct, I followed, my sneakers silent on the cracked sidewalk. The gate was rusted, chained shut, but the shadow slipped through like it was nothing. A voice, low and guttural, whispered from nowhere, "Clara, you kept it hidden." My heart pounded. No one in Millfield knew about my past, not the full story. In college, I'd been part of a prank gone wrong, one that left a classmate hospitalized. I'd lied to cover my tracks, said I wasn't there. The guilt had followed me, but I'd buried it deep. How could anything here know? I turned and hurried home, locking the door behind me. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house sounded like footsteps, every gust of wind like that voice. The next evening, it was there again, closer this time, standing under a streetlight that flickered and died as I passed. Its form was clearer now, no face, just a void where one should be, and arms that seemed to stretch too long. I ran, my keys jangling, and didn't look back. At school the next day, I confided in Mrs. Ellison, the history teacher who'd lived in Millfield her whole life. Her face paled when I described the shadow. "That's the Grayson curse," she said, voice low. She told me the family had been wealthy, secretive, rumored to dabble in things they shouldn't, rituals to keep their fortune, tied to the land. When they disappeared, folks said the house took them, and the shadow was what they left behind, hunting anyone with a secret. Mrs. Ellison showed me old newspaper clippings in the school library, missing persons, all linked to Sycamore Lane, dating back decades. A farmer in '82, a teenager in '95, all seen near the Grayson house before vanishing. She warned me to stay away, but the shadow didn't let me. It started appearing outside my classroom window, a dark smear against the glass, only visible to me. Kids complained of feeling watched, though they saw nothing. At home, I found smudges on my windows, like fingerprints but too large, too distorted. The voice grew louder each night, "Tell them, Clara, or come to us." Desperate. I visited the town's pastor, Reverend Hale, who lived near the church. He was old, his hands trembling as he poured tea, but his eyes were sharp. "The shadow feeds on guilt," he said. "The Graysons made a pact, long ago, with something not of this world. It guards their secrets and takes those who carry their own." He gave me a worn book from his shelf, a journal from a 19th century preacher. It described a cleansing ritual: stand before the house at midnight, speak your truth aloud, and burn a token of your sin. Be honest, he warned. It knows lies. I couldn't ignore it anymore. The shadow was everywhere, in my rearview mirror, in the reflection of my coffee mug. I gathered what I needed: a letter I'd written to my college friend, never sent, admitting my part in the prank. On a moonless night, I walked to the Grayson house, my hands shaking as I clutched the letter and a lighter. The shadow was waiting, taller than ever, its void face seeming to pulse. I stood at the gate, lit the letter, and spoke. I was there that night. I helped with the prank. I lied to save myself. The flames ate the paper, and the shadow quivered, shrinking slightly. The voice hissed, "More." I froze. What more could I give? Then I remembered a smaller lie, one I'd almost forgotten. I'd cheated on an exam to keep my scholarship, the one that got me to Millfield. I confessed that too, tears streaming. The shadow wailed, a sound like wind through broken glass, and dissolved into the night. I thought it was over. But the next morning, I found the gate to the Grayson house ajar, though I hadn't touched it. Inside, on the porch, was a charred piece of my letter, unburned words reading, "Not finished." I left Millfield a week later, renting an apartment in Indianapolis. But sometimes, in quiet moments, I see a shadow flicker in a window or hear a whisper in the dark. Last month, Mrs. Ellison emailed me. A new teacher, fresh to town, vanished after walking down Sycamore Lane. If you're ever in a small town and see a shadow that doesn't belong, don't wait. Speak your truth, burn your guilt, and pray it's enough. Because some houses never let go. Story 5. The Hollow Choir of Redstone. My name is Lucas Bennett, and I'm 27, a part-time handyman and volunteer firefighter in Redstone, a forgotten little town in eastern Kentucky with barely 900 souls. Nestled in a valley where the hills rise steep and the creeks run cold, Redstone's the kind of place where time feels stuck, like the world moved on and left us behind. The town's got one gas station, a church with a sagging steeple, and a general store where gossip flows faster than the coffee. I was born here, raised by my mom after my dad skipped town when I was 6. I stayed because it's home, because the hills feel like part of me, even if they hold secrets I wish I'd never learned. Last summer, I heard the choir singing in the hollow, and it's a sound I can't unhear, a warning I can't ignore. It was June, the air thick with humidity, fireflies blinking in the dusk like tiny ghosts. I'd just finished a shift at the fire station, mostly cleaning equipment and shooting the breeze with the guys. Redstone's quiet, so fires are rare, but we'd heard stories about the hollow, a wooded dip in the hills about a mile out, where the trees grow too close and the ground stays damp. Folks called it the Devil's Choir, said you could hear singing there at night, voices that weren't human. My grandpa used to warn me, stay out of the hollow, Lucas. It calls to those who've done wrong. I laughed it off, figuring it was just old tales to scare kids. But on June 14th, everything changed. I was driving home along the back road, windows down, the smell of pine and earth filling my truck. The sun had just set, painting the sky a deep indigo. As I passed the turnoff to the hollow, I heard it, a faint melody, like a hymn but off-key, drifting from the trees. It wasn't a radio or a church group, it was too eerie, too layered, like dozens of voices weaving together in a language I couldn't place. I slowed the truck, my skin prickling. The fire station had taught me to trust my gut, so I pulled over, grabbed my flashlight, and stepped out. The air was still, no crickets, no wind, just that singing, pulling me toward the hollow like a hook in my chest. The path was overgrown, brambles snagging my jeans as I pushed through. The singing grew louder, clearer, and I swear I heard my name woven into it, Lucas, come sing with us. My heart raced. No one in Redstone knew about my mistake, not the full story. 2 years ago, I'd been desperate for cash after Mom's hospital bills piled up. I'd helped a buddy, Nate, move some stolen goods, car parts, electronics, through a guy in Lexington. I knew it was wrong, took my cut, and swore I'd never do it again. But guilt's a heavy thing, and it clung to me like damp clay. Whatever was singing knew. The hollow opened into a clearing, the ground soft and mossy, ringed by trees that seemed to lean inward. In the center stood a circle of flat stones, like an old altar, and the air shimmered, like heat rising off asphalt. The singing stopped abruptly, and the silence was worse, heavy and expectant. My flashlight flickered, then died, leaving me in moonlight. That's when I saw them, shapes in the shadows, not quite human, their forms wavering like reflections in a rippling pond. They had no faces, just smooth, pale surfaces where I should be, and their mouths opened wide, releasing that awful hymn again. One stepped forward, its voice a whisper in my mind, "You took what wasn't yours, Lucas. Sing it to us." I stumbled back, my boot catching on a root. The shapes didn't move, but the singing grew louder, pressing against my skull. I ran, branches whipping my face, the voices chasing me, now chanting my crime, "Thief, thief." I made it to my truck, hands shaking as I floored it home. Inside my trailer, I locked the doors, but the singing followed, faint but relentless, seeping through the walls. I didn't sleep that night, the memory of those faceless things burning in my mind. The next day, I tried to act normal, fixing a leaky pipe for Mrs. Carver at the store. But she grabbed my arm, her eyes sharp. "You heard the choir, didn't you?" she said. I froze. She dragged me to the back, where she kept old town records. "It's been here since Redstone began," she said, showing me a ledger from 1880. The town's founders, a group of settlers, had built on land taken from a local family who'd practiced strange rituals, offerings to something in the hills. When the settlers drove them out, the hollow became a place of vengeance, its choir summoning those with sins to confess, or to claim. Disappearances followed, a shopkeeper in 43, a preacher in 67, all last seen near the hollow. The singing didn't stop. It came every night, louder, clearer, outside my windows, in my dreams. I saw the shapes in town now, flickering at the edge of the gas station, in the church parking lot. My friend Nate, who'd roped me into the theft, called me one night, panicked. He'd heard the singing too, seen the shapes. "They know, Lucas," he said. 2 days later, he was gone. His truck was found near the hollow, empty, no tracks. I went to Pastor Green, a wiry man who'd seen too much of Redstone's strangeness. He listened, then handed me a tattered book of folklore. It described a ritual to silence the choir, offer something tied to your sin, buried in the hollow at dawn, with a spoken confession. "It's gotta be true," he said. "They'll know if you lie." I gathered what I could, the cash I'd kept from the job, hidden in a coffee can, and a note I wrote to Nate, apologizing for dragging him in. At dawn, I returned to the hollow, the air thick with mist. The shapes were there, watching, silent. I dug a hole in the clearing, buried the can and note, and spoke. "I stole. I lied. I'm sorry." The ground trembled, the singing faltered, and the shapes faded. I thought it was over. But that night, the singing returned, softer but menacing, not enough. I found the hole I dug empty, the can split open, the note torn with one word scratched into it, "More." I left Redstone the next week, crashing with a cousin in Louisville. The singing's quieter now, but I hear it sometimes, in the distance, calling my name. Last month, Mrs. Carver texted, "A new guy in town, a drifter with a shady past. Vanished near the hollow." If you're in a small town and hear singing where no one should be, don't listen. Confess your wrongs, bury your guilt, and run. Because the choir never stops, and it's always hungry. Story 6. The Watcher at Crow's End. My name is Sarah Tate, and I'm 33, a librarian in the small town of Crow's End, tucked away in the foggy hills of western Oregon, where the population barely hits 700. It's a place where the evergreens tower like silent giants, and the mist clings to everything, making the world feel half-dreamed. I moved here 4 years ago, escaping a messy divorce in Portland, craving the kind of quiet where you can hear your own thoughts. Crow's End seemed perfect, a sleepy hamlet with a single cafe, a general store, and a library where I could lose myself in books. But there's something in the fog here, something that watches, and last fall, I met it face to face at the edge of town, and I've never felt safe since. It was late October, the days growing short, the fog so thick it swallowed the streetlights. I'd taken to walking home from the library along Old Mill Road, a gravel path that skirts the forest and ends at my rented cottage. The townsfolk had their stories, tales of a figure in the fog, a watcher who appeared to those who'd wronged someone. They called it the Crow's End Watcher, said it lingered where the road met the woods, near an old oak split by lightning decades ago. I dismissed it as small-town superstition, the kind of thing bored locals spun to pass the time. But on October 19th, everything changed. I'd stayed late at the library, cataloging a donation of dusty old books. It was past 8 p.m. when I locked up, the fog so dense I could barely see 10 feet ahead. My flashlight cut a weak beam through the haze as I started down Old Mill Road, the crunch of gravel under my boots the only sound. Halfway home, I felt it, a prickle on the back of my neck, like someone was staring. I turned, shining my light, but saw nothing but swirling mist. Then, from the edge of the woods, a shape emerged, a silhouette, tall and thin, standing just beyond the oak. It wasn't moving, but its presence felt heavy, like it was pressing the air down around me. I called out, "Who's there?" My voice trembled, swallowed by the fog. No answer, but the figure tilted its head, and I swear I saw eyes glint, like a predator's in the dark. I quickened my pace, heart pounding, but the figure kept pace, gliding silently along the tree line. The fog seemed to part for it, revealing more, a tattered cloak, arms too long, and a face that wasn't a face, just a blur, like a smudged photograph. A voice, sharp and cold, cut through the silence, "Sarah, you broke a vow." My stomach dropped. No one in Crow's End knew about my divorce, not the real reason. During the marriage, I'd cheated, a one-night mistake I'd hidden from everyone, even my ex, Mark. The guilt had driven me here, to start over, but this thing knew. It knew everything. I ran, my cottage's porch light a faint beacon. Inside, I bolted the door, but the fog pressed against the windows, and I could feel those eyes still watching. The next morning, I tried to shake it off, blaming the late hour and my imagination. But the figure returned that night, closer, standing in my backyard, its silhouette framed by the fog. I stopped walking home after dark, driving instead, but it didn't matter. I'd see it in my rearview mirror, or catch its reflection in the library's windows, always just out of reach. The voice came too, whispering my shame, "You lied to him, Sarah. Tell the truth." I confided in Mrs. Lowry, the cafe owner who'd lived in Crow's End forever. Her hand shook as she poured my coffee. "That's the watcher," she said. "Been here since the town was built." She showed me an old photo album, kept in the cafe's back room, filled with grainy images from the 1900s. One showed the oak, and in the background, a blurry figure, just like what I'd seen. She told me the town's founders had settled on land claimed by a reclusive family, rumored to commune with spirits in the forest. When the settlers burned their cabin to drive them out, the watcher appeared, a guardian of broken promises. Missing persons followed, loggers, travelers, anyone with a hidden betrayal, last seen near the oak. The sightings grew worse. At the library, books would fall from shelves, open to pages about oaths and lies. My cottage's windows would fog up, even on clear nights, with words scratched into the condensation, "Confess." I couldn't sleep, the watcher's eyes haunting my dreams. I called Mark, thinking a confession might free me. I admitted everything, sobbing over the phone. He hung up, silent, but the watcher didn't leave. It was outside my bedroom window now, its form clearer, its non-face seeming to pulse with my guilt. Desperate, I visited Mr. Hale, the town's retired postmaster, who knew every story Crow's End held. He was frail, living in a cluttered house filled with old maps. "The watcher wants truth," he said, handing me a journal from the 1880s. It described a ritual: face the watcher at the oak at midnight, speak your betrayal aloud, and offer something tied to it. "It has to be enough," he warned. "Or it takes you instead." I gathered what I could, the wedding ring I'd kept, hidden in a drawer, and a letter I wrote to Mark, detailing my betrayal. At midnight, I drove to the oak, the fog so thick it felt alive. The watcher was there, waiting, its form towering. I held up the ring, lit the letter, and spoke. "I cheated on Mark. I broke our vows. I'm sorry." The flames flared, and the watcher's form flickered, shrinking slightly. The voice hissed, "More." I froze, then remembered a smaller lie. I'd told my mom I was fine, hiding my shame to spare her worry. I confessed that too, voice breaking. The watcher let out a wail, like wine through dead branches, and vanished into the fog. I thought it was done. But the next day, I found the ring on my porch, unburned, with scratches around it forming a single word, never. I left Crow's End a week later, moving to Salem, but the fog follows me. I see the watcher's eyes in reflections, hear its voice in the wind. Last week, Mrs. Lowry called, a new librarian, fresh to town, disappeared near the oak. If you're in a small town and feel eyes in the fog, don't ignore it. Speak your truth, offer your shame, and pray it's enough. Because some watchers never stop looking. Story 7. The Keeper of Bone Creek. My name is Nathan Wells, and I'm 38, a hardware store clerk in Bone Creek, a small town in southern Montana with just under 1,000 residents. It's a place where the plains stretch wide under a sky that feels too big, and the wind carries the scent of sagebrush and something older, something sour. I grew up here, in a trailer park on the edge of town, raised by my aunt after my parents died in a car crash when I was 9. Bone Creek's got a gas station, a bar called Dusty's, and a creek that runs red with iron-rich silt, giving the town its name. I stayed because it's all I know, because the open land feels like freedom, even if it's a lie. Last spring, I met the keeper, a thing that lives in the creek, and it showed me what Bone Creek really hides. I'm still running from it. It was early May, the air warm but sharp with the promise of evening chill. I'd been working late at the hardware store, restocking shelves after a busy day selling fence posts to ranchers. Bone Creek's quiet, but it has its stories, tales of the creek itself, how it used to be a sacred site for the Crow people before settlers claimed it in the 1860s. Locals whispered about the keeper, a spirit tied to the water, said to guard the creek and punish those who'd spilled blood, even indirectly. My aunt used to say, "Don't cross the creek at night, Nathan." It remembers. I thought it was nonsense, just old fears to keep kids in line. But on May 12th, everything changed. I'd locked up the store around 9 p.m., the sky a deep purple streaked with clouds. My trailer was a mile out, across a wooden bridge over Bone Creek. I usually drove, but that night my truck was in the shop, so I walked, my work boots crunching on the gravel path. The creek was low, its reddish water glinting under the moonlight. As I approached the bridge, I heard it, a low gurgle, not the usual rush of water, but like someone whispering underwater. I stopped, peering over the railing. The creek's surface rippled, and for a moment, I saw a face, pale, eyeless, its mouth stretched wide, staring up at me. I stumbled back, heart hammering, but when I looked again, it was gone. The gurgling grew louder, forming words, "Nathan, you carry blood." My knees buckled. No one in Bone Creek knew my secret, not the whole truth. When I was 17, I'd been in a fight at a bonfire party, drunk and stupid. I'd punched a kid, Tommy, harder than I meant to. He fell, hit his head on a rock, and ended up in a coma for weeks. I lied to the cops, said I'd only pushed him, and no one pressed charges. Tommy recovered, moved away, but the guilt stayed, a weight I carried alone. Whatever was in the creek knew it. I hurried across the bridge, but the gurgling followed, now a chorus of voices, all saying my name. I glanced back and saw it, a figure rising from the water, tall and gaunt, its body slick with red silt, like it was made of the creek itself. Its eyeless face turned toward me, and its mouth opened, releasing a sound like drowning screams. I ran, my trailer's lights a distant hope, but the voices were in my head now. "You spilled blood, Nathan. Pay the price." I locked myself inside, but the gurgling seeped through the walls, and I swear I saw the figure's silhouette through my window, standing in the yard. The next day, I tried to act normal, selling nails and paint at the store. But the creek's pull was stronger. At dusk, I saw it again, the figure, standing on the bridge, its body dripping red water. I confided in Dusty, the bar's owner, a grizzled man who'd seen every strange thing Bone Creek had to offer. He listened, pouring me a whiskey, and said, "That's the keeper. Been here since the settlers came." He showed me an old ledger from the town archives, kept behind the bar. It told of the creek's history, how settlers had killed a Crow shaman who'd guarded it, dumping his body in the water to claim the land. The keeper rose after, taking anyone with blood on their hands. Missing persons followed, a rancher in 54, a hunter in 89, all last seen near the creek. The sightings didn't stop. The figure appeared everywhere, outside the store, in the reflection of my coffee pot, its eyeless face always watching. At night, the gurgling filled my trailer, whispering my crime, Tommy's blood, Nathan. Yours now. I found red silt on my porch, though the creek was a mile away. My coworker, Lila, noticed me shaking one day and said her brother had seen the keeper years ago, after he'd accidentally killed a dog while driving drunk. He'd left town, and the sightings stopped. I couldn't leave, though. My aunt was sick, and I was all she had. I went to old Mrs. Tully, the town's unofficial historian, who lived in a cabin cluttered with artifacts. She was 80, sharp as a tack, and knew the creek stories better than anyone. The keeper wants payment, she said, handing me a journal from a 19th century trapper. It described a ritual: offer something tied to your guilt, cast it into the creek at midnight, and confess aloud. It has to be enough, she warned, or it pulls you under. I gathered what I could: a photo of me and Tommy from that summer, and a letter I wrote, admitting what I'd done. At midnight, I stood on the bridge, the keeper rising from the water, its eyeless face inches from mine. I threw the photo and letter into the creek, shouting, I hit Tommy. I lied. I'm sorry. The water churned, swallowing the offerings, and the figure sank, the gurgling fading. I thought it was over. But the next morning, I found the photo on my doorstep, soaked in red silt, with a single word scratched across it: more. The keeper was back that night, closer, its screams louder. I called Tommy, found him through an old friend, and confessed everything. He forgave me, but the creek didn't care. I left Bone Creek a week later, moving to Billings with a cousin. The gurgling's quieter now, but I hear it in storms, see the keeper's face in puddles. Last month, Dusty called, a new rancher, rumored to have a shady past, vanished near the creek. If you're in a small town and hear whispers from the water, don't cross the bridge. Confess your sins, offer your guilt, and run. Because the creek remembers, and it never forgives.